Okay, this is going to be a little documentary on how I ended up knurling my bushings. Now I only did the short ones for now because I have to do several jigs to get them to work. But the step one is to get the knurling wheels rigged up in something, and I decided to use one of my cheap pipe cutters. And I had ordered 2 sets of these wheels, so I had to grind this edge down so to get these wheels to the outside edge as far as I could. I could probably go a little bit more, and then the pins are different, so I had to create some pins, and I've just anchored them on the far side. I didn't anchor them on this side. Had to shim them over to lay against that outer edge, and that way when I squeeze them down onto the bushing, that it lays against it and creates the knurl. Okay. The next thing I discovered I had to do was had to create a jig to put it in, and I happen to have 2 of these little shims. And so I got one of them and I set it up on the top, and then I just used some tape to center it on the shaft. Then as you see, I had to grind the outer edge of that down so that when the knurling wheels came to the end, it didn't catch this. If I did, as you can see, it would have caught that edge of that. So that'll sit up right up on that. Then the other one would go right underneath it, slip in, put a washer on it, put a nut on it to squeeze it down, then these would cinch down on it. Okay, but I found that without anything inside supporting it, it will crush down on it, and it'll just flex. So I had to create out of some 1/2-inch rigid copper, which will fit those, but kind of loosely. And I took a piece and I had to sand it way down, and then I wrapped it with another piece of sheet metal, which I sanded down to like 5/1000ths, and it goes over it, and then it slips inside it nice and snugly, so that that's sandwiched down on it. And so when the unit squeezes down on it, it's got something to back it up. Okay. A little tricky. Now I have to do the bigger ones, and that's gonna take a little bit more. So it'll spin it like that, and it just squeeze it right down on it. Squeeze it tight. I'm not gonna screw that one up. That's all there was to it. I got my drill set to as slow as it can go. We should go a little slower. That's really about all there is to it. I did all the little ones and increased it just about 1 millimeter. That's all it did. But hopefully that's enough to make them have a little friction tightness in there. I'm still probably going to have to glue them, but we'll see. I still got all the big ones to do and all these mid-range ones to do. And then I bought nylon washers to go between them for thrust washers or wear washers. I actually bought some new sleeves too. I'm going to have to cut a little bit off of these. Then I had to bore these out slightly for the 10mm bolts to work. But it should work pretty good. Alright. Alright, now let's talk about installing these new bushings. One of the first concerns that I caught on the net was that some people had a concern about taking the old ones out if they were already glued in. Well, as everybody knows, I already glued mine in, so I don't think this. I already did one side, so I don't think there's going to be too much issue with it. Just spin them a little. They'll break right loose. Snap loose. I wonder if this would help if I gave it a little support. Yeah, just put a bushing in there, give it a little bit of support, and snap right loose. And then next step is to clean these out completely. Make sure there's no oil or anything in them, or no grease in them. Okay, now they're all cleaned up. One thing I wanted to point out was that I don't know if the EXs have them or if it's just a characteristic of the older 53s, but when they built the A-arms, not only did they put a hole in for the grease cert, but they doubled it. There's another one back inside there. I don't know if you can see it at the end of my screwdriver. Right inside here. This hole shouldn't be there. And left open, the grease, when you're trying to grease it, just runs down inside the tube. So I'm sure they've probably fixed that now, but in the day, in 15, they didn't fix that. So what I did was I had just cut some nail heads off, let them go about 1/2 inch total length, stuck them in the holes, glued them in the holes, and that stopped the grease from going out the holes and into the A-arms. Well, the new bushings are a little bit longer, as you can see. Well, I don't know if you can see it. Let me just do this. They're a little bit longer, and they actually will touch the nail head. And what I did on the other set was I ground the nail heads down to real thin and pancaked them out to lay in against the tube nice and flat as I could, and then let the bushing go over the top of them. But even as thin as that was, it still distorted the bushing slightly, and I had to make a little bit of adjustment inside it just so it wouldn't rub wrong on it inside there. So with this time, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and not do anything with the heads, just glue them back in, and then I'm just going to notch out a little bit on the side of the bushing for the head to come up against on each side. It'll have to be, they come together about like that, and it won't take that much, you know. It's just a little notch. I'm going to have to line them up, and when I squeeze it together, it'll have to go right to it. You know, I'll have to mark them on the outside so I don't get them off. The other thing is, even though I knurled these, that's going to make, still going to make, whether they fit loose or they fit tight now, they'll have to be pressed in. But just the tracks of the knurling will still provide an excellent place for grease to travel between the tube and the bushing, and right out to the outside edge out here. And we don't want any grease to travel here. All we want the grease to do is to travel out between the sleeve and the bushing. So you're still going to have to glue these in. Now what I'm going to do on these is I'm going to put a ring on the inside edge and a ring on the outside edge, and then I'm going to squeeze these in and squeeze them together. The only real benefit I found on knurling is that after I get them in, the little bit of extra pressure that it puts on the bushing does fit the sleeve, make it fit the sleeve a little tighter and a little more the way it's supposed to fit. And that's the only real benefit of it. You still have to glue them. See, right now, you know, other than the sealing edge on the outside, it's still a little loose on there. but after it's squeezed into the bushing or into the tube, it fits much tighter. So that's the only plus is, but you're still gonna have to glue them. It's not gonna squeeze down enough to, it's not gonna seal enough to stop the grease from coming through the knurling and then out. So, oh well, what you gonna do? You can't. We should just make a set that fit. That sure would be nice. I've put in a message to ASR, but they haven't done anything about it yet. Okay, so that's the next. I'm going to notch out a little bit of these, just for those, you know, and then all I have to do is squeeze them in there. That's the next step, okay? All right. The other thing I was thinking that this would provide, and now that these are notched out, is a little anchor point inside to make sure that these don't spin inside there, because that head will make a perfect little anchor once it's, you know, squeezes down around them. It's only going to be about there, but it still will actually be some kind of anchor point for those, and it really can't do much. So I just notched it out a little bit to make sure that you know, that the heads will fit in there. It's actually apart a little bit, like more like that. So I mean, that's more than plenty for that head to sit in. And the grease cert on the other side, you still have to have room for the grease to get down through it and between the sleeve and the bushing and work themselves to the outside. Okay, they're glued in, as you can see. They do stick up a little bit there. There we go, that one's down. That one's in. And, so we will go ahead and get these guys in, one of them anyway, so you can see how that goes. You might want to mark, you know that the hole is straight down into here, so mark this on each side of this so you know which way the notch has to go. We'll go ahead and put a ring of glue around each starting point. It's going to be more of a seal than gluing, at least this end of it is. Alright, now we'll go ahead and put our clamp on. Get it about 3/4 of the way in. And since that one's already there, I'm going to go ahead and put some more glue on this one, because I want a nice ring on the outside edge, and since this one's already there, let's go ahead and get that in. Then we'll squeeze that one in. Ring in there, because this one's going to be the one that holds it and seals it too. There we go. And don't get it too hard, don't squeeze it too hard, because you don't want all the glue to leave between the sheave, or between the bushing and the tube, because you want a little bit of bond there. And just wipe the excess down. You don't want to take it all off, because you want to spread it out and seal that whole edge. Just doesn't hurt to have a little bit extra there. That's in, so take it off. Yeah, that worked. Good. No issue. Let that set. Do the same to the other side. Okay, let's do another one. Put your clamp on it. This is actually the way they're supposed to go in. Supposed to have a little bit of resistance like that. I was half tempted to say screw it, knurling the rest of them, but you know what? That's probably worth it. It sure is a pain in the ass to do. But all the way down, not too much pressure. Then just take your excess and just spread it around between the bushing and the sleeve, or the tube. Calling this the tube, the white part here, because that's what it is. It's a tube. Alright. There. Now, both bushings are installed. Now the next thing to do is we're going to have to custom cut our new sleeves to fit. As you can see, there's a little length difference. Fortunately, these aren't all that super hard, so you can cut them. You also have to drill out the centers a little too. You're going to have to use the same bolts, the 10mm bolts. You're going to have to drill those out a little bit. But like I say, it's not case hardened steel. So I wanted to make a special note. No matter what you do, these sleeves have to fit tight between the mounts. Now we've had some issues with the mounts, wallowing out because they're not fitting tight enough, and they're not being torqued down to where this becomes a single member for the bushing to roll on. There's some of them that, now I have one that's got like almost 3mm of play in there. So if you're going to custom cut these, make sure they need to touch both sides as they slide in and out of there, so that when your bolt squeezes down, that it's squeezing down against that sleeve hard, so that sleeve can't move, and neither can the bolt. It's a solid link between this side and this side. Okay, that's the life. Okay. All right. Well, let's cut the sleeve. What we've done is we've marked it. We've marked it where we need to cut it, but we want to make sure we cut it a little long, so because we're going to grind it a little bit at a time to fit it properly. Okay, now that we've got the sleeves cut and inserted, now it's time to put our wear washers in. I'm going to be using these nylon washers that I got, and on the other installations I had to sand these down just slightly so that when they're installed, that the brackets don't exert any pressure on the bushing through that. The brackets have to bear pressure only on the sleeve, not on the bushing or on the wear washers. Just there, so it can rotate, like with ease. Now I've already tested this one, and I need to sand this one of these or both of these down just ever so slightly. And all I'm going to do is take it over to my sander over here and just sand the outside edges of it off. You know, just sand them just slightly thinner. That's all. Okay. Now we'll. I know that that's probably going to be enough, so I'm going to put a little bit of lube on this, on these outside edges. Just a little bit. It's amazing. You don't really need any, but it's amazing how these nylon washers slide against the new bushings. It's almost like greased lightning without any kind of, you know, issue at all. Okay, so there you go. That is probably okay. You can test this by taking just your regular clamp and clamping down on it. Because you want to clamp on the sleeve. You don't want any pressure. You don't want any pressure to transfer through onto the tube or onto the bushing, because that will cause it to start moving. As you see, I can squeeze the shit out of it hard as I can, and it still rotates free, and it doesn't have any side movement. Now you can adjust the side movement by how much you sand off of the wear washers. But that's man, that is some slick stuff right there. Nah, I don't think that's gonna squeak. That's gonna be nice. I am looking forward to that. Okay, so that's one side. Now I'll do the other side, and I've already tested it. I know that I need to take a little bit off of it too, and then we'll let it sit overnight and put it back together. Okay.